My beloved child, listen closely and do not turn away, because what I am about to reveal is something I have been holding back until this very moment, and it cannot wait any longer. I have waited long enough, and now the time has come to uncover everything you were never told, everything you never understood, everything that seemed hidden, confusing, or left in silence. This is not just a message, it is a breakthrough wrapped in truth, sent directly from my heart to yours with great urgency. The reason I waited wasn't because I didn't care, but because the weight of what I am about to show you required maturity, readiness, and a heart desperate to hear only me above all other noise. Every second I was silent, I was protecting you from fragments of truth you would not have known how to carry before. You were still too tender, too raw from pain, too unsure of who you were in me. But today, I see your heart beaten but still open, tired but still reaching, confused but still willing, and that's why I have chosen this moment to speak it all. You don't have to chase answers anymore. You don't need to beg the heavens to explain. I have arrived in this very hour to take off the veil, to pierce through the spiritual fog, and to pour clarity where your spirit has been screaming for peace. I know you've questioned the silence. I know you've cried, asking, why haven't you told me what's really going on? But child, hear me, some things are too sacred to speak prematurely. I was preparing the environment, pruning your surroundings, purging what didn't belong, because I refused to place holy truths in the hands of the unready. But now you are ready. Now your heart is ripe. Now your faith, even though tested by fire, has held. That's why I'm about to reveal what has been happening behind the scenes, why the delays lasted so long, why the door closed when it seemed open, why people exited with no warning, and why you were left in rooms full of echoing silence instead of answers. You were not forgotten. You were being forged. And now, with holy fire still blowing in the ashes of your trials, I have decided to speak without filter, without pause, without shadows. This isn't just another moment, it's a spiritual turning point. Your ears are about to hear things that will free you. Your eyes are about to see why nothing made sense until now. My child, I speak because the hour is urgent. There is no more time for confusion. You need to walk into what I've prepared without fear, and you cannot do that blindfolded. So I am tearing every veil. I am exposing every lie. I am declaring every hidden intention of those around you. I am showing you who hath been sent and who has been planted to distract. I am separating the fake from the faithful, and this unveiling starts with my voice in your room right now. This is not imagination. This is not coincidence. This is the divine moment you prayed would come, and it is here. Take this seriously, because every word I say next is a key, an urgent, heaven-ordained key to unlock doors that have remained shut for too long. Stay alert, because what I reveal next will shake your assumptions and settle your spirit. Even in the moments when it felt like your footsteps were invisible and your sacrifices unseen, I was there observing with intention, storing every decision, every act of faith, and every tear-stained night into the depths of my memory. You assumed your obedience was quiet and your battles were hidden from all, but I was not distant. I was closer than breath, tracing your journey with divine precision. I saw the late-night choices you made to honor me when no applause followed. I saw you walk away from things that tempted your soul, not for reward, but because your heart longed to stay clean before me. I watched the inner struggles, the thoughts you didn't share with anyone, those quiet wars between giving up and holding on. And not one of those moments went unnoticed. You weren't alone in that room when you whispered for help with trembling lips. You weren't deserted in the crowd when your heart silently screamed for relief. I was leaning in, recording every step you took in the shadows while the world applauded others walking in the light. Your unseen movement was sacred to me. Your effort in silence carried more weight than loud declarations with no cost. I knew how much strength it took to keep walking when the ground beneath you felt unstable and the path ahead was fogged by uncertainty. You chose to keep going when doubt mocked your progress. You refused to quit even when quitting felt like the only option. And I, your Savior, have been tracking it all. I am the God who watches closely, not to judge you, but to gather the proof of your perseverance and honor it in divine timing. My eyes have followed your path with tenderness, with pride, with unwavering love. You didn't think it mattered, but everything you did with pure motive has been engraved in the records of heaven. The doors you opened for others when yours remained shut. The prayers you whispered for people who hurt you. The blessings you released over others while you bled internally. All of it collected, counted, remembered. You have no idea how much beauty I saw in your small choices, the kind no one thanked you for. When you picked up your Bible instead of your phone in that hour of despair, I noticed. When you bit your tongue instead of responding with anger, I noticed. When you believed I was good even when life felt brutal, I noticed. Nothing slipped past me. Not a sigh. Not a sacrifice. Not a single brave step. And now, I'm not just watching, I'm responding. I've come to tell you that every quiet yes, every sacred surrender, every invisible offering is about to be acknowledged openly. What was done privately will be honored publicly. What felt like walking alone was actually walking beside the King. I was not only observing, I was intervening in ways you couldn't see, protecting you from sabotage, setting divine appointments, steering you away from traps set in spiritual realms beyond your awareness. You were not moving aimlessly. You were being led through terrain that required silence and hiddenness because it was not time for exposure. But that season is shifting. This revelation comes now because the chapter you are entering requires you to understand that nothing you endured or obeyed was wasted. You're about to witness the fruit of steps you didn't even know bore weight. What others dismissed as small, I have called significant. You were never forgotten. You were being studied by heaven. And now that study is turning into a release. The reward is not just coming, it is already being released into motion. What I have seen, I will now reveal. What you sowed in stillness, I will multiply in plain sight. Stay close, because the next part I tell you will explain why the pain had to follow the path. You wondered why my voice felt far when your soul was desperate for answers. But I need you to understand something that has been hidden in my silence. There was purpose in my quietness, strategy in the stillness. My silence wasn't rejection, it was protection. It wasn't abandonment, it was alignment. I withheld my voice not because I was absent, but because speaking too soon would have shattered what I was building inside of you. I am a father who knows when to speak and when to stand still beside you, letting you develop the strength to hear me beyond your emotions. In the quiet, you grew in discernment. In the absence of noise, you learned to sense me in ways deeper than speech. You became someone who didn't just rely on comfort, but who chose me even when you didn't feel me. That is something sacred, something rare. I allowed the silence so your roots would drive deeper, so your faith would not collapse under the weight of quick answers. There were moments when you begged me to just say something, anything, but I knew that the questions you carried were growing you in ways answers never could. There is a wisdom I birth in waiting, a fire I forge in stillness. But now, child, I have reached the appointed hour where that silence must chatter, because the things I've kept veiled are ready to be released. The time has arrived where I will speak not just gently, but boldly, not just through impressions but through undeniable direction. I am now giving language to your longings, clarity to the confusion, exposure to what has been operating in hidden darkness. You thought I forgot, but I was preparing my words like a surgeon prepares a blade not to harm, but to cut away every layer of misunderstanding, fear, and false belief that tried to define me in your mind. The enemy tried to use my quietness as proof that I had left you, but I say to you now with power, I never left your side. Not for a second. I was walking you through a realm where only faith survives, and now that you've made it through, I am about to open my mouth and speak truths that will not just explain the past, but shape your future. I have stored up words for this very season, words that carry instruction, restoration, direction, and deliverance. My voice will now go where no encouragement could reach. My revelation will go where no affirmation can touch. You are not hearing this by chance. I waited to speak until your spirit was quiet enough to receive it without distortion. I've been waiting for you to lay down every idol of opinion, every counterfeit counsel, every distraction dressed as wisdom so I could step into the center and be the only voice you follow. And now, the veil is lifting. You are about to hear things from me that will correct years of confusion in moments. You are about to receive understanding that will silence decades of doubt. I speak now because the time to stay hidden has passed. I speak now because what you need next can only come by direct impartation from my spirit. Get ready to be interrupted by revelation. Get ready to wake up with sudden clarity. Get ready to see people, places, and decisions with a level of spiritual accuracy that no longer permits delay. I am not speaking vaguely, I will be specific. I will reveal intentions. I will confirm assignments. I will guide your feet with the wisdom of heaven, not the noise of earth. And I say to you again, the silence is over. Not because I've changed, but because you've grown into the one who can handle what I've been holding. Stay listening, because my next words will unravel the very thing that's been holding you hostage. The petitions you whispered when no one knew your heart was breaking have reached me, and the time has come for response. Not vague signs, not scattered impressions, but precise truths tailored for your current place. You've waited with trembling hope, asking me in hidden hours, why is this happening? What should I do next? Where are you? And now I will not only answer you, I will satisfy the deep unrest that's been dwelling in the back of your mind. I have heard every plea you poured out behind closed doors, and I've seen your spirit strain for clarity while life kept moving without explanation. You kept returning to me even when it felt like you were left in silence, and that faith, raw, honest, unpolished, is the very reason I'm responding now. This moment was marked before you ever lifted your voice in prayer. I already knew the precise hour when I would lean in and begin to disclose the things that have been confusing you. I am not here to give you partial responses that leave you more lost than before. No, I am bringing the kind of revelation that clears the fog and brings stillness to every internal storm. I will make known to you the hidden motivations of people around you. I will expose the reason certain opportunities never reached your hands, and I will explain why doors that looked promising crumbled when you touched them. You were never being punished, you were being rerouted around danger disguised as success. You've cried out for understanding about relationships that ended without warning, and I will now show you the intentions behind their withdrawal. I'm revealing not just surface-level insight, but truth so complete that your very soul will breathe again. No more guessing. No more wondering if you misheard me. You've been living in spiritual tension, unsure whether to wait or move, to speak or be silent, to let go or hold on, and now I am here to resolve that wrestling. When I speak, confusion must flee. When I explain, peace takes root. This will not be answers filtered through other people's opinions or shaped by second-hand understanding. This is me directly, deliberately, definitively responding to your longing heart. You've asked about your calling, about whether you missed your moment, whether too much time has passed, whether you've fallen too far. I say to you now, I will not only answer you, I will recalibrate your journey. The steps that seemed misaligned will be woven into purpose. You haven't missed it. You're exactly where you needed to be to receive what's coming next. You prayed for light, and I'm sending it in full measure. You sought direction, and I'm releasing divine precision. You wanted to know the why, and I'm about to show you the how, the when, and the who. This is a season of holy revelation. I'm not offering inspiration, I'm giving strategy. What once made no sense will soon become the foundation of your testimony. I will answer in dreams. I will answer in divine interruptions. I will speak through unexpected voices, and I will confirm through my spirit dwelling within you. My words will bring ease to the burden you've carried, and joy to the places that have only known questions. Keep your heart attentive. Answers are now flowing like a rushing river. They won't trickle slowly, they will rush all at once. This is not about information. It's about divine coordination. You are about to witness things clicking into place without your effort, because the questions you've asked have pulled on the heart of your Father. And my child, when you ask from a place of surrender, I will never leave your longing unanswered. What I speak next will explain not only your past but ignite your future. When everything around you felt like it was shutting down, like the progress stopped cold and nothing was moving forward, you assumed it was over. You thought the collapse was final. You believed the silence, the separation, the loss meant you had missed it, missed your purpose, missed your chance, missed your moment. But I tell you now with authority from heaven, what you interpreted as the conclusion was never the ending. It was a deliberate pause, orchestrated by my hand. I permitted the stillness not to hurt you, but to shield you from moving ahead too quickly into places that were not yet prepared to hold what I've placed inside you. There are times in your journey when forward motion would have caused unnecessary damage. So I inserted my hand into the timeline and whispered, "Wait." And because you didn't understand, because no explanation came immediately, you felt abandoned. But you weren't being cast aside, you were being preserved. I had to freeze certain dynamics in your life, not to withhold blessings from you, but to let layers of pressure you weren't meant to carry fall off. I paused your plans because the foundation beneath them was cracked. If I had let you keep building, everything would have eventually collapsed, and the fallout would have buried your joy. So I did what a wise builder does. I halted the construction. I paused the process so that I could rework the blueprints, refine the materials, and reinforce the areas that needed strength you couldn't see was missing. And now I am lifting the pause. You are about to walk into what you thought was lost forever. You are about to resume what seemed ruined. But this time, you're walking in with a deeper awareness, stronger discernment, and sharper focus. You are not the same person who stood in that last season. You have been refined through disappointment, sharpened by waiting, and deepened through surrender. This version of you is ready for what's coming. This time, the ground won't shake under you, it will hold you. The season that looked like delay was actually development. The people who disappeared didn't walk away randomly. I removed them, because they were not assigned to your next elevation. I paused everything long enough for the wrong attachments to break off, for the loud opinions to fade, and for my voice to become the only one you truly craved. You thought nothing was happening, but I was working behind the curtain, repairing what your eyes couldn't reach. I was shifting timelines, realigning hearts, removing traps, and clearing paths. What looked like stillness was sacred activity, strategic, unseen movement that required your trust. You kept looking for signs of momentum, but I was securing your foundation. And now, as this pause lifts, you will not return to what was, you will advance into what is greater. You will move not with panic, but with purpose. You will rise not with fear, but with favor. You were not stuck. You were stationed. You were not forgotten. You were being formed. You were not finished. You were just waiting for the signal. And child, this is it. The pause has accomplished what I sent it to do. The lesson has taken root. The transformation is complete. It's time now to breathe deeply again, not in hesitation, but in confidence. It's time now to act, not react. Awaiting did not disqualify you, it requalified you. And as I now put things into motion, you will see with clarity why nothing moved before. You will thank me for every closed door, every silent hour, every slow day, because without them, you wouldn't have the wisdom you carry now. And what I am about to place into your hands demands someone who knows how to value divine timing. So don't look back thinking you failed. Look ahead knowing you've been prepared. The next revelation I give will open your eyes to what was actually being birthed while it looked like everything had died. The pain you endure wasn't meaningless, and it wasn't random. It held layers, depths, and mysteries that were never visible on the surface. While you cried out for deliverance, I was embedding something inside your trials, truths too sacred to reveal until now. You only saw the discomfort. You only felt the loss. But I was embedding messages inside those moments of anguish that were designed to awaken wisdom within you later. You see, your suffering was never meant to destroy you. It was coded with insight, instructions, and revelations that were only activated through pressure. I hid treasures in your struggle, not to torture you, but to ensure that when you emerged, you'd carry authority rooted not in theory, but in real encounter. While others questioned your situation from the outside, I was speaking to you through the inside, the sleepless nights, the aching silence, the days when your strength faded without explanation. All of that carried secrets I knew you'd one day need to unlock things in others. You don't know it yet, but your story is a map for someone else's escape. That's why I allowed the fire not to burn you, but to expose gold you didn't know you carried. Some of the things you now understand, you would have never learned through ease. I use affliction as a teacher. I used brokenness as a door. The very moments you thought had no meaning are now being turned like pages in a sealed book, revealing wisdom that will shape how you walk, speak, and influence. You asked me to make you stronger. I answered by allowing the very environment that could grow what peace never would. I placed divine patterns inside the pain, and I'm now unfolding them before your eyes. You will start to notice connections between past confusion and present clarity. Situations that once made you feel abandoned will suddenly be seen as places where I planted deeper insight. Encounters that wounded you will now be viewed through a lens of empowerment, because what was once seen as loss is now revealing itself as the foundation of purpose. I did not waste your suffering. I used it as soil. In that soil, humility took root. Compassion blew. Discernment matured. You didn't just survive. Child, you became someone I can now trust with deep assignments. You learned how to listen beneath the noise, how to pray when the answers didn't come, how to move forward even when your heart was bleeding. And now I am unveiling the secrets that were hidden in plain sight all along. What seemed like a collapse was a sacred setup for the insight you will now carry with boldness. I am pulling back the curtain, revealing why certain things were allowed, why certain relationships were removed, why certain doors never opened, and it will all make sense, not because you understand with your mind, but because I am pouring understanding into your spirit. This is not head knowledge, it's impartation. The revelations I release now will not just change your direction, they will give you keys to unlock doors for others who are walking through storms like the one I just brought you out of. The very wounds you tried to hide will become instruments of healing for people who have no idea how to stand. And you won't have to force it, because the wisdom you now carry was earned in the secret place of suffering. I did not leave you there, I was with you, whispering, shaping, anchoring your soul to truths that cannot be stolen. You were being formed in the fire, and now the smoke is clearing. You will see the blueprint hidden beneath the ashes. You will walk forward not as a victim of pain, but as a vessel of purpose. And with every step you take, I will continue to reveal more of what I planted in the soil of your sorrow. The next thing I unfold will reveal how your agony was actually a doorway to your anointing. Those moments when emotion overwhelmed you and words failed when all you could do was weep, I was there, not as a distant observer but as the one gathering every drop like a sacred offering. I captured each tear not symbolically but literally. I didn't allow them to vanish into the air. I preserved them. In my realm, they became evidence of trust, currency of surrender, vessels of testimony. While others may have dismissed your pain or told you to move on, I treated each tear as holy, each one holding a story, a moment, a prayer unspoken. The world saw your tears as weakness, but I saw them as prophetic declarations born out of unseen battles. You didn't cry out of despair alone, you cried because your spirit refused to give up hope. You cried when no one gave you answers, but you still believed there had to be more. And because you didn't walk away, because you didn't let go even in the ache, those tears have now become a voice that reaches into heaven and demands response. I tell you this in truth, your tears have been speaking to me louder than the most eloquent prayers. They've been asking for justice, for recompense, for healing, and I am now releasing answers in the form of tangible shifts. Where you once wept from loss, you will soon rejoice from restoration. Where sorrow once sat in silence, celebration will rise up in song. I allowed space for you to cry so I could meet you there, not just to comfort, but to transform. In the quiet places, your tears watered the ground of future joy. They softened the soil of your heart, allowing me to plant what couldn't have been sown in hard places. Your tears weren't in vain. They were investments. And the return on that surrender is arriving not gradually, but forcefully. I'm turning tears into testimonies that others won't be able to deny. The evidence of your inner struggle will now serve as the foundation for the outward miracle. I have always listened to your voice, but there were times when your tears spoke more clearly than your words. You didn't always know what to pray, but I translated the sobs, the sighs, the breathless moments of anguish. I understood it all. I heard the language of your heartbreak, and I never forgot. While time moved forward and seasons changed, I kept what you thought was forgotten alive in my hands. I have carried your tears through the spiritual realm like sealed scrolls, and now I'm opening them before the throne. Justice is being released. Compensation is being arranged. Honor is being returned. I'm restoring not only what was lost, but the strength you poured out while surviving the loss. You thought those tears only represented pain, but they also carried faith. That's what makes them powerful. That's why I've chosen now to let them speak on your behalf. Your tears have become testimony. They've reached places your voice never could. They've positioned you for blessings you never dared to imagine. And now, when the people around you see what I'm about to do in your life, they won't understand the depth of it, but you will. You'll remember the nights you cried yourself into my presence. You'll remember the mornings you had to face the world while broken inside. You'll remember the quiet corners where you whispered my name with nothing left to offer but trust. And in that remembering, you'll see how I kept every single moment sacred. I honored your vulnerability. I never turned away. And now, as the breakthrough begins to manifest, your soul will recognize this was not random, this was divine repayment for what the world overlooked. So I say to you now, the tears that once stained your pillow will soon mark the place where you bow down in gratitude. The ones that fell in the darkness are about to bloom in the light. And this is only the beginning, because the next thing I reveal will show you how I've been turning every moment of grief into divine glory. You've wrestled with the memories, turning them over in your mind, trying to make sense of the heartbreaks, betrayals, sudden endings, and doors that slammed shut before you could even knock. You stood in rooms filled with questions, wondering why things unfolded the way they did, why I didn't stop it, why I didn't shield you from what hurt, why I allowed certain paths to collapse just as you were stepping forward in faith. I heard every silent accusation your heart dared not speak aloud. And I never condemned you for asking. I waited for the moment you were ready to hear the answer without bitterness clouding the truth. That moment is now. I allowed certain things to happen not to destroy you, but to save you from what would have looked like success while secretly draining your spirit. There were situations you begged me to bless, but had I said yes, they would have become cages disguised as promises. I saw what you couldn't see behind the smiles and opportunities. I saw the trap wrapped in charm. I saw the burden hiding behind the blessing you thought you needed. So I said no. Or I said not yet. Or I let it break so it wouldn't break you later. Every setback was a setup to reroute your feet onto the path where peace would finally find you. I didn't cause all the harm, but I did allow it to serve a purpose higher than comfort. I knew that without certain disruptions, you'd never pause long enough to notice the areas in your life that were silently poisoning your joy. Some of the people you lost were never meant to stay, not because they were evil, but because their assignment in your story had reached its end. Holding on any longer would have delayed your healing. I allowed the separation because I wanted to create space for something real, something lasting, something not based on performance or convenience. I permitted the delay in answers so you would no longer chase outcomes, but seek me. I let the silence linger so that your dependence on voices around you would fade and your hunger to hear my whisper would grow. I know you didn't understand it then. I know it felt cruel. But child, if I had given you what you cried for when you asked, it would have been a counterfeit version of the beauty I had planned. What you thought was redirection was actually redirection. What you perceived as failure was foundation. What you called abandonment was preparation for deeper revelation. I was not punishing you, I was protecting the calling I placed inside you. And now I reveal this to you not to reopen wounds, but to show you how carefully I've been weaving redemption into every shattered plan. The pain wasn't wasted. A struggle wasn't random. A confusion wasn't accidental. It was all a part of the deeper work I was doing within you. Because the place I'm taking you next requires a version of you that no longer doubts my goodness in the storm. I needed you to walk through some things so you would stop basing your faith on what I give and start anchoring it in who I am. I had to remove what distracted your devotion. I had to challenge the idea that I am only near when life feels easy. And now that your eyes are opening, you will start to see how I used every fragment of pain to position you in divine alignment. The purpose is beginning to reveal itself. The storyline is shifting. And the very things you once labeled as mistakes will become the evidence of my mercy. The next truth I give you will make it undeniable that I never left your side. I was just preparing the ground for the harvest you're about to receive. You carried it for so long, that ache in your chest, that weight in your soul, wondering if what you suffered was the result of something you did wrong. The enemy tried to convince you that you were being punished, that you were overlooked, that your hardship was some kind of proof that you'd failed me. But now, with all the authority of heaven, I need you to know this truth that breaks every lie. Your pain was never retribution, it was refinement. I wasn't disciplining you for failure, I was preparing you for insight. What you endured wasn't a sentence handed down, it was a training ground I allowed, because what I'm about to release to you requires someone who's not just heard of fire, but walked through it and survived with their soul intact. The sorrow wasn't sent to destroy you, it was there to wake up what had been dormant inside. There are layers of discernment, strength, courage, and spiritual understanding that can only be formed through direct contact with struggle. You didn't earn your place through perfection. You've been forged through fire. And that pain you thought disqualified you actually positioned you for the very revelation I'm now unveiling. You see, I've chosen to speak to you in this hour not because you never got it wrong, but because through every broken moment, you kept coming back. You kept seeking. You kept trusting, even with shaky hands and tear-filled eyes. That kind of loyalty doesn't go unnoticed. That kind of faith in the valley becomes the foundation for authority on the mountain. I let you experience depth so I could now trust you with truth. I let you be broken open so your heart could receive what shallow spirits could never comprehend. You cried in the dark, thinking no one saw, but I was there, not just watching, but marking you for greater insight. And now I speak to you, not because you reached perfection, but because the cracks in your life have created space for me to pour in what is holy. Your wounds have made you capable of compassion. Your battles have made you strong enough to carry weight without crumbling. Your journey, though jagged and misunderstood, has made you the perfect vessel for what I'm about to release. There were things I couldn't reveal to you until you had walked through certain storms, because only now can you see from the perspective I needed you to have. I had to allow the crushing so you could recognize the value of the oil that flows from it. This revelation would have seemed too big for you before. It would have felt overwhelming. But now you're ready. Now your spirit is quiet enough to receive. Now your vision is clear enough to see what was always there beneath the surface. You're not who you used to be. Pain has carved wisdom into your being. It's chiseled away ego, pride, and illusion. And in its place, it has made room for a divine download that will shift how you walk, how you speak, how you respond to life. This isn't just about healing, it's about awakening. I'm showing you mysteries that were hidden behind curtains of discomfort. I'm unveiling what was always yours, but could only be entrusted to someone who wouldn't misuse it. I don't waste experiences. And I never allow pain to visit your life without embedding revelation in its shadow. So now I say, lean in. What I am about to speak next will build on the foundation that suffering laid. You're stepping into a season where the preparation makes sense, where the past no longer haunts but equips, where every scar becomes a key, and every dark moment becomes a lamp illuminating the way for others. Get ready, because the next thing I share with you will unlock the very reason you had to endure what tried to break you. You felt the weight of absence, like a silence that wouldn't lift. People who once stood close suddenly distant. Relationships that once brought warmth turning cold. Voices that used to encourage now gone without reason or warning. You questioned what changed. You questioned yourself. You questioned me. You looked around at the empty spaces and asked if you had done something wrong to cause the loss. You felt abandoned, discarded, and misunderstood. But I tell you the truth. Their exit was never your failure, it was my arrangement. I allowed certain people to walk away so I could have your full attention for what I'm revealing now. I watched as they withdrew, not to leave you hurting, but to create a holy vacancy for my voice. They couldn't stay, not because they were evil, but because they were not meant to be in the room when I spoke the deeper things I've reserved for your ears alone. I didn't need their opinion polluting the moment I whispered destiny into your spirit. I removed them because I was about to say something too personal, too weighty, too holy for those who didn't carry the reverence to listen. I wasn't just protecting you from heartbreak, I was preparing you for impartation. Some people were assigned only to the surface layers of your life. They were never meant to see the chambers of your soul. And when I began to take you deeper, their roles concluded. You thought they left because you weren't enough. But they departed because they had reached their limit. They couldn't grow with you. They couldn't walk with you into places their feet weren't trained to stand. And while their departure wounded you, I stayed. I remained when the crowd thinned. I leaned in when you were alone with nothing but questions. I stood with you in the quiet corners of your breaking, not speaking yet, but never turning away. Because I was waiting. Not waiting to punish you, waiting for you to become still enough, humble enough, surrendered enough to truly hear what I've been longing to say. You were never alone, child. You just couldn't feel me while the noise of approval and the weight of performance drowned out my whisper. So I cleared the room. I allowed the distance. I allowed the detachment. Not to isolate you, but to prepare a sanctuary where truth could descend without resistance. And now, look around, it's just you and me. The clutter is gone. The distractions silenced. The false supports removed. Not to leave you broken, but to rebuild you, to reveal to you, to call out of you what was buried beneath layers of validation seeking. I waited until now because I knew that when all the voices left, you'd finally lean into mine. And what I have to tell you is sacred. It's not something I could shout over the noise of approval. It's not something I could whisper while your ears were filled with the opinions of the world. What I'm saying now, I reserved for the moment you'd be still enough to truly absorb it. And because you didn't chase after those who walked away, because you chose to sit with me in the aftermath, because you stayed open even while aching, I am releasing revelation into your life that others forfeited. You are about to hear me in a way you've never heard before, not because I just arrived, but because now, finally, nothing stands between us. I have waited for this moment not just to comfort, but to commission you. Not just to mend you, but to equip you. You thought their leaving marked your ending, but it actually signaled your unveiling. You're stepping into a space where the only voice that matters is speaking directly to you. And the next words I give you will not just explain what happened, they will unlock what's next. There were unseen battles surrounding you, moments you didn't even realize how close the adversary came to derailing your destiny. You walked through days that felt ordinary, but in the spirit realm, they were nothing short of war zones. Forces came against your mind, your health, your willpower, hoping to exhaust you enough to make you quit before you reach this turning point. Hell bet everything on your collapse. Every delay, every betrayal, every lie whispered to your heart was calculated to convince you to let go of the promise I gave you. The pressure wasn't random. It was resistance meant to crush your resolve and convince you that pressing forward wasn't worth the pain. But you kept going. You dragged yourself forward when strength was low. You worshipped when you had no answers. You believed even when you couldn't see the outcome. That persistence terrified the darkness. Because what the enemy feared most wasn't your perfection, it was your refusal to give up. You made it here. And that, my child, shifts the atmosphere around your life. This is the moment the war against you starts losing ground, because you've outlasted the schemes set to silence your calling. The gates of hell were never afraid of a comfortable believer. They tremble when a broken one stands back up and says, "I'm still here." And that's exactly what you did. You survived what should have buried you. You outlived the accusation. You put through isolation. You made it through the nights of doubt, the mornings of numbness, the seasons that tried to strip your hope bare. And because you're still standing, even in weakness, I can now release what I withheld, not because I didn't want to give it earlier, but because the breakthrough was assigned to the one who endured. You are not standing in this moment by chance. It is a divine threshold. The enemy threw everything he had at your progress, hoping to stop this encounter, to prevent you from receiving the instructions I'm giving now. But his plan failed, and every failed attack becomes a receipt, proof that you are still chosen, still covered, still marked by grace. You weren't supposed to recover, but I raised you up. You weren't expected to believe again, but your faith survived the fire. And now, this victory, this secret triumph, marks the beginning of something irreversible. You shifted. The enemy knows it. Heaven knows it. And now, you're about to know it too. You're not returning to how things were. You've crossed over into divine timing, and everything ahead of you is about to align because you endured what tried to break your core. What others thought disqualified you has actually become the evidence of your readiness. The pain, the confusion, the spiritual warfare, none of it disqualified you. It verified you. You were tested and not found lacking. You were tempted and did not surrender. You stood your ground when you didn't even know what you were fighting for. And now, what the enemy tried to keep you from is being handed to you by my hand alone. You are stepping into reward not because it's owed, but because it's promised. The next phase of your life is not a continuation of old cycles, it's a divine redirection into what was delayed but never denied. Because you're still here, still listening, still seeking me, I can now open up the fullness of what I have reserved for this moment in your journey. Do not doubt the weight of what's happening in this very hour. I'll hope this moment would never come. But it's here. And the next thing I show you will reveal just how much was riding on you reaching this point. There were truths I kept beyond your reach, not because I wanted to withhold clarity, but because exposing them too early would have overwhelmed what you were still becoming. I didn't hide things to punish you, I covered them to shield you. Some knowledge, though valuable, carries weight your heart was not ready to hold. I saw where you were fragile. I knew which revelations, if received too soon, would have caused confusion instead of confidence. I understood the timing of your readiness better than you did. You asked me why I wasn't revealing the full picture, but I was looking further down the road, ensuring that when I did show you, it would lift you, never crush you. There is a difference between what you want to know and what you're prepared to carry. I saw the difference. That's why I protected you with silence. There were people you wanted to understand, situations you begged me to explain, opportunities you wanted to pursue, and I stepped in and covered your eyes. Not to blind you, but to build you. If I had unsealed the reality too early, it would have distracted you from becoming who you needed to be. I had to keep certain details veiled, not because you were incapable, but because I was establishing depth in you that required mystery to mature. You needed to walk by trust before you could walk by clarity. And now, after all the stretching, after all the inner preparation, after all the long seasons where you felt suspended between questions, I am lifting the cover. This is the hour I show you what I've been holding back. This is the moment where what was concealed is now being unveiled with precision. You are not who you were. You have grown into someone who can handle insight with responsibility. You are no longer ruled by impulse, driven by ego, or led by insecurity. That's why I'm giving you access to what was hidden before. I am opening doors of understanding, not just to inform you, but to equip you for where I'm sending you next. You will begin to notice how the pieces fall together. Events that once seemed isolated will now reveal their connection. People who walked away without explanation will now make sense through the lens of protection. Dreams you dismissed will resurface, now framed by divine confirmation. What I hid before, I'm now ready to place in your hands. This is not guesswork. This is precision timing. The curtain is being pulled back not to impress you, but to position you. You've been faithful without knowing, and now I'm rewarding that endurance with revelation. You will look at old pain and finally see purpose. You will revisit past decisions and realize how I was guiding your steps through moments that felt chaotic. The delay was not a denial, it was a safeguard. I withheld not to frustrate you, but to fortify you. You now carry the strength to handle what once would have shattered you. The timing of this unveiling is no accident. This is the threshold of a deeper assignment, and I refuse to let you step into it unprepared. That's why I guarded certain truths like treasure, because they are treasure. They carry the weight of strategy, the spark of vision, the framework for your next elevation. And now that I am releasing them, nothing will look the same again. Your perspective is about to transform. Your decisions will carry a new sharpness. Your conversations will shift. Your direction will narrow. This is what revelation does, it changes how you move. To receive this moment as holy. I'm not just showing you secrets. I'm showing you yourself, the version I always saw, the one who could steward what's sacred without compromising it. And this is only the beginning. What I reveal next will explain why the wait was not just necessary, it was the greatest gift I could have given you. The adversity you've walked through didn't arrive as evidence of condemnation, it came as confirmation of calling. The things that tried to bury you weren't signs that you were forsaken. They were tools I allowed to refine and define you. Every hardship wasn't sent to break you, but to form something inside you that comfort never could. You have spent time wondering if you've been marked by misfortune, asking yourself if you somehow triggered a spiritual backlash, as if your struggle was proof of some hidden punishment. But listen closely, there is no curse on you. There is no doom hanging over your life. There is only purpose so potent, so distinct, that it demanded pressure to awaken it. I have been shaping you deliberately, not randomly. What you've mistaken as rejection has actually been my way of removing everything that isn't compatible with your real identity. You've cried over closed doors and sudden losses, but I was carving away what couldn't go with you where you're headed. When a sculptor begins with raw stone, the image doesn't appear with one gentle tap. It takes chisel after chisel, blow after blow, to uncover the masterpiece inside. That's what I've been doing in your life. The friction wasn't failure, it was formation. I wasn't angry with you, I was crafting you. The weight you felt wasn't punishment, it was proof that you're being trusted with more. I'm removing layers of fear, cutting off generational patterns, sanding down insecurities. So what remains is someone who cannot be manipulated by man or intimidated by resistance. You are being molded into someone who walks with such clarity, such focus, such spiritual force that even the enemy trembles when you stand. I don't train the ordinary this way, I reserve this level of process for those who are called to walk in uncommon authority. You weren't overlooked, you were selected. That's why the battles have felt fierce. That's why your prayers have felt tested. That's why your faith has been under fire. I was proving to the forces of darkness that no matter what was thrown at you, you wouldn't be stopped. And they tried. Oh, they tried. But you're still here, and now, you're rising. The process had been painful, but the product will carry power. I am building in you the kind of strength that cannot be shaken by storms, the kind of peace that doesn't waver when others panic, the kind of love that is not dependent on how people treat you. This is the version of you that can carry what I'm about to release. I had to carve away false confidence so you could be rooted in me. I had to allow certain disappointments so your stability wouldn't depend on approval or applause. I've been taking you through a season of holy resistance to strengthen your discernment, discipline, and devotion. The world will see your glow, but only you and I will know the fire it took to get here. You're not cursed. You're chameleon. And once you understand that, you'll stop interpreting opposition as a sign to quit and start recognizing it as validation that you're walking in the right direction. Nothing hath been wasted. No pain is meaningless. Every blow has been calculated by the hands of the one who knows exactly what must be removed in order to reveal who you truly are. And child, the version of you that's emerging now is unstoppable not because of ego or ambition, but because of brokenness surrendered, pieces surrendered, strength reborn in surrender. I've taken my time shaping you because I do not rush when I'm building something that lasts. And what's about to be released through your life requires someone who knows they are not cursed but called, chosen, and carved for something eternal. And now that you know, what I say next will give you the strategy to carry it boldly. You looked at the clock. You watched the calendar. You measured your progress against timelines you once believed were sacred, and when nothing unfolded the way you expected, you assumed something had gone wrong. You questioned your faith. You doubted my presence. You worried that you missed something essential, that you somehow misstepped or lost your window of purpose. But I need you to hear me now, not with your emotions, but with your spirit. Every delay you encountered was divine. Not one of them was designed to ruin you. Every slow season, every moment of waiting, every unexpected detour was part of a strategy much larger than what you could see from where you were standing. While you were anxious for movement, I was preparing the ground beneath you. I don't operate according to human deadlines. I operate according to eternal design. You thought things were falling apart when they were actually being held back for greater alignment. I saw what you didn't, what was waiting behind the door you were trying to force open too soon. Had I given you everything you asked for when you asked for it, it would have become a weight you weren't prepared to carry. I'm not interested in giving you temporary success. I'm establishing longevity rooted in purpose, and that requires process. The delay protected you from premature exposure, from settling for what looked like a blessing but would have drained your strength over time. You thought the pause was punishment, but it was patient. I slowed things down so your character could catch up with your calling, so your discernment could grow strong enough to recognize what is truly from me and what only looks like it is. You've been comparing your journey to others, wondering why they advanced while you were still circling the same mountain. But what you saw as stagnation was sacred shaping. You were being prepared in secret for an assignment that can't be rushed. I needed you to learn the weight of waiting, not because I enjoy withholding, but because I want you to be equipped when acceleration comes. And yes, it is coming. Suddenly, swiftly, and without warning. But it had to wait until your identity wasn't shaken by timelines. You now know how to trust me even when nothing is moving. That makes you ready for what I've been holding in reserve. Every delay bought you time to heal, time to grow, time to detach from people who couldn't go with you, time to release habits that would have sabotaged the next level. You didn't lose time, you gained strength. And now, what seemed like a season of nothing is about to erupt with evidence. What you thought was you being forgotten was actually me carefully crafting every detail so that when the doors open, there will be no cracks, no instability, no backcutting. You will walk into the next season sure of who you are, clear about who I am, and anchored in a peace that no delay could take from you. What others built in haste will not compare to what you're about to receive, because what I build lasts. The fruit that grows from delay is sweeter, richer, and it multiplies. Your waiting hasn't been empty. It's been full of divine activity behind the veil. Angels have been dispatched. Assignments have been prepared. Atmospheres have been adjusted. And when I say move, everything will unfold quickly, not because it's rushed, but because it's right. You didn't miss your moment. You're about to see it rise up in front of you like a wave that was never lost, only gathering strength in the deep. So let go of the lie that told you it was too late. I am not bound by time, I hold time. And because I hold you, your story is still unfolding in perfect alignment. The next thing I release will prove that what was delayed wasn't denied, it was being designed for such a time as this. You thought you were being pushed aside, that doors were slamming without explanation, and that opportunities you believed were meant for you vanished without warning, but I was the one who intervened. I stepped in, not to frustrate your plans, but to rescue you from what was waiting ahead that you could not yet discern. You only saw what looked promising. I saw what was hidden beneath the surface. I saw intentions masked as invitations, and I blocked your entry before the danger could reach you. I interrupted what you thought would bless you because it would have quietly poisoned your peace. You don't yet understand how many times I redirected your steps while you wept over closed access. I wasn't being cruel, I was shielding you from consequences that would have set you back years. I allowed discomfort because comfort would have made you settle. I didn't explain right away because had I told you everything, your heart wouldn't have let go. So I did what a protective father does, I removed you. Suddenly. Sharply. Without the explanations you begged for. Not because I don't value your understanding, but because your preservation matters more than your temporary relief. Some of the detours you labeled as confusion were actually mercy. You tried to revive things I buried for your sake. You wanted to reconnect with what I separated you from, thinking it was a test of love or endurance. But I wasn't testing you, I was extracting you from danger. I saw the manipulation dressed up as opportunity. I saw the compromise hidden behind flattering words. I saw the emotional entanglement forming slowly, looking innocent on the outside but crafted to entrap your purpose. So I moved you. I shook the ground under your feet to break your attachment. I let the discomfort rise so you'd stop forcing what wasn't meant to continue. I even let you feel misunderstood by those you wanted to hold on to, because your loyalty to them was beginning to threaten your alignment with me. And now, on this side of the disruption, I'm letting you see what I was sparing you from. Not everything you wanted was meant to be obtained. Some paths look straight, but they curve into compromise. And that you kept walking, you would have slowly lost your voice, your peace, your fire. I intervened before it could harden your heart or dilute your anointing. You have no idea how many schemes I canceled in silence. How many false promises I blocked before they reached you. I placed delays on decisions that would have sounded right but ended in regret. And you called it rejection, but it was redirection. It wasn't because you weren't good enough. It was because you were worth protecting. I've called you to walk a narrow path, and I cannot let you build your future on unstable ground. I've invested too much into you to allow the enemy to hijack your journey with half-truths. So I pulled you out, even when you didn't understand. I rerouted you into silence, into waiting, into isolation so you'd detox from what was trying to claim your identity. And now you're beginning to feel the clarity returning. You're starting to realize why I had to make it end the way I did. Because you wouldn't have left otherwise. But now you're free. Now your eyes are opening. Now your heart is available again, not to familiar distractions, but to divine direction. You've been preserved not just for safety, but for assignment. And the path I'm placing you on next will not just feel right, it will be right, because it will carry peace without pressure, purpose without pretense. This is what protection looks like from a God who sees what you cannot. And what I reveal next will show you how every closed road was just me pointing you toward the one that's finally open. You stared at some doors longer than you should have, knocking with expectation, waiting with hope, convincing yourself they would eventually open if you just stayed faithful enough or proved yourself worthy. But no matter how much you prayed, planned, or pressed, they stayed shut. And the more you waited, the more frustration grew, until you began to wonder if something was wrong with you, if I had withdrawn my favor, or changed my mind about what I promised. But I tell you now with certainty, not one door was closed to punish you. They were closed to protect your preparation for something greater. Each door I sealed was me speaking, even if it felt like silence. I wasn't ignoring you, I was answering you in a language your spirit didn't yet know how to translate. Not this. Not now. Not here. Just wait. I knew what was behind every opportunity. I knew what the outcome would be if you stepped into something not aligned with the timing I designed. I saw what that open door would cost you later. And so, in my mercy, I denied access. You cried at thresholds that could not contain the weight of your calling. You pleaded for chances that would have become burdens disguised as blessings. But while your heart was tethered to what seemed like the best available option, I was orchestrating something far beyond what you dared to imagine. I don't give according to desperation, I release according to destiny. And sometimes, in order to lead you into the extraordinary, I have to disappoint your expectations first. The disappointment you felt wasn't rejection, it was redirection. It was me stepping in and saying, don't settle here. Don't anchor your hope to something that's beneath what I've prepared. You only saw the door that didn't open, but I saw the one that would. At the exact moment your character was ready to sustain what was waiting behind it. You thought you were being delayed, but you were actually being aligned. Each closed door was a prophetic announcement in disguise, declaring that something better was being built, something that wouldn't require you to force your way in, compromise who you are, or shrink to fit inside. I never intended for you to fight for a seat at a table I didn't set. I've always planned to bring you into rooms where your presence wouldn't feel like intrusion, but fulfillment. You won't have to beg for it. You won't have to prove yourself to people who can't see your worth. The doors I open will welcome you because I'm the one who unlocks them, not based on effort, but on identity. And while you were mourning what didn't happen, I was preparing something that can't be taken from you. You see, I wasn't just closing doors, I was closing cycles. Cycles of striving, of needing approval, of chasing what doesn't feed your soul. I was teaching you to listen beyond what feels urgent and trust what I'm doing in silence. You're not being punished for hoping, you're being elevated for trusting. And soon, the wait won't feel like wasted time, it'll feel like the greatest mercy you ever experienced. Because what's coming won't just replace what you lost, it will redeem the time you spend waiting. You won't just receive something good. You'll receive something custom-built for your capacity, your growth, your purpose. And when you step through the door, you'll finally understand why the others had to remain locked. So lift your eyes, child. What's ahead is not second best, it's divinely timed. The delay with the announcement that what you thought was enough isn't even close to what I've prepared. Stay close. What I reveal next will show you the door I've been waiting to open all along, and this time, it won't close. You looked at the silence and assumed I had turned away. You saw others advancing, celebrating, building, and you began to wonder if I was bypassing you entirely. It felt like you were invisible while everyone else was being seen. But let me say this with clarity, my eyes were always on you. Not once did I overlook your efforts. Not one moment of surrender went unnoticed. You weren't pushed aside, you were being placed precisely. I was arranging your steps not randomly, but strategically. I wasn't withholding recognition, I was relocating you for something that required a different angle, a new foundation, a better elevation. I know you longed to be validated, to see fruit from your labor, to feel the momentum you believed you were promised. But I needed you to understand something much deeper before the reward could be revealed. The process of being positioned often feels like being overlooked, because where I place my chosen ones is rarely where the crowd gathers. I was guiding you into spaces not filled with applause, but with purpose. While others rushed to platforms, I was leading you into secret places to develop endurance, focus, and unshakable trust. If I had promoted you before preparing you, the weight would have crushed what I was cultivating. I wasn't ignoring your prayers. I was responding through movement you didn't yet recognize. I shifted relationships, closed environments, changed dynamics not to confuse you, but to align you with the exact coordinates of your next divine assignment. The positioning felt like exile, but it was preservation. The places I sent you seemed barren at first, but they held everything needed for your growth. You were planted, not punished. And planting always feels like burial before the bloom breaks through. I was hiding you, not to diminish you, but to protect you from the glare of exposure that would have pulled you out of process too early. Sometimes I wrap promotion in isolation. Sometimes I answer your desire for direction with redirection. And though you couldn't see it, I was placing you on a path that would intersect perfectly with what I have assigned to your name. If I had let you stay in the spotlight too soon, voices would have shaped your confidence that were never meant to define you. But in the quiet corners, I taught you how to hear me with clarity. I was strengthening your core when no one else was clapping. You're not here by chance. You're exactly where I need you to be, not a step behind, not a moment late, not lost in delay. The path I carved for you required space to breathe, stretch, unlearn, and rediscover who you are apart from performance. You didn't need to chase influence, you needed to walk into impact, and impact takes time to prepare. And now, your positioning is becoming evident. What felt like detours are beginning to look like design. People who couldn't see your worth before are starting to notice the grace on your life, but more importantly, you're seeing it too. You're recognizing that what looked like silence was actually strategy. What you called waiting was meandering you. And now, with every new door, with every assignment that begins to unfold, you'll move not with desperation, but with authority. You won't try to fit in, you'll walk in knowing you've been chosen for such a time and place. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You have not missed it. You were being placed like a cornerstone, measured, intentional, essential. And now that the foundation is firm, I will begin to build on what hath been laid in faith. The next words I speak will show you just how much I've arranged while you thought nothing was happening. There were seasons when you heard me, but only partially. You listened with filters shaped by pain, by pressure, by the noise of those around you. My words came, but they were often reshaped by your expectations, misread by your urgency, or weighed down by fear. You wanted my direction, but you also wanted it to fit within your plan. So I waited. I didn't walk away, I waited. I remained close while you ran in circles, trying to make things happen your way, hoping to hear confirmation of what you already decided in your heart. But I love you too much to endorse a version of truth that is convenient but incomplete. I had to wait until the moment you finally stopped long enough to hear not just what you wanted to hear, but what I've been longing to say all along. I didn't delay because you were disobedient. I delayed because what I'm about to say requires your full attention, your full surrender, your full openness. I needed you to reach a place where all other voices lost their grip on your confidence, where no opinion could rival mine. I brought you to the end of your striving, not to frustrate you, but to liberate you from the cycle of partial obedience that was costing you peace. You thought you were ready before, but you were still holding on to too much. You were still trying to blend my truth with your plans, still trying to make room for attachments I was asking you to release. And so, I waited until your ears weren't just open but desperate for clarity that no one else could provide. I waited for the moment your spirit could finally absorb the weight of what I need to reveal. Because my truth is not soft. It's not designed to entertain or flatter, it's built to transform. It challenges. It redirects. It uproots what's been tolerated for too long. But it also heals, strengthens, and restores what lies buried beneath all the noise. And now, child, you're ready. You're no longer trying to force me into your framework. You're ready to be reshaped by mine. You're no longer asking me to bless what you haven't surrendered. You're handing me everything, no matter the cost. That's why I can now speak freely, without being edited by your expectations. I can show you the fullness of who you are without the masks, without the fear, without the need to be understood by those who never saw the real you. My truth is coming now like a wave, not to drown you, but to wash away every lie you unknowingly agreed with. It will correct not just your direction, but your identity. I will show you who you've always been underneath the trauma, the rejection, the delay. I will remind you of what I spoke over your life before life started speaking back. This truth will be firm, but it will be freeing. It will feel like light flooding a dark room, not because it's loud, but because it's undeniable. And with it will come restoration of time, healing of mindset, alignment of vision. You will no longer move from assumption. You will move from revelation. What once felt confusing will become simple. What used to burden you will lose its power. Because truth doesn't just clarify, it liberates. I brought you to this moment not to scold, but to upgrade. Not to shame, but to recalibrate. You are now in position to receive without resistance. The soil of your heart is ready. The noise has quieted. The distractions have faded. And now, As I begin to pour out truth without filter, you will understand why I couldn't speak like this before. What I reveal next will not just answer your questions, it will awaken the authority you didn't know you still had. From the moment you stepped into this world, voices began shaping your reflection through broken mirrors. Words were spoken over you that didn't belong. Labels were placed on you by people who didn't understand what I created. Expectations were forced on you that never matched the blueprint I designed. And over time, you began to wear those words like garments, adapting yourself to fit definitions that were never holy. The world taught you to measure your worth through performance, through perfection, through appearance, through applause. It tried to convince you that you had to earn your value, prove your strength, achieve to belong. And every time you failed to meet its impossible standards, shame crept in, whispering lies that you were falling short, that something was wrong with you, that you were not enough. But I'm speaking now to expose every one of those falsehoods and bring you back to the truth I breathed into your being before time began. You are not who they said you were. You are not what the failure declared. You are not what comparison made you believe. You are not your mistakes. You are not your trauma. You are not the silence of others when you needed to be seen. The world took your name and tried to replace it with labels that kept you in cycles of striving and survival. But I gave you a name long before anyone else had a voice. And that name is still written in my records, untouched, uncorrupted, undiluted by time or experience. I called you chosen. I called you holy. I called you mine. And now, I'm removing every counterfeit identity the world stitched into your soul. I'm peeling away the masks you had to wear to be accepted. I'm dismantling the false narratives that kept you in hiding, fearing you'd be too much or not enough. I didn't design you to be small. I didn't form you to fit in someone else's mold. I placed within you a divine imprint, a signature only heaven could authenticate. And no voice, no failure, no culture can overwrite that. You've spent years trying to become what others applauded, all while shrinking the parts of yourself that carried the most light. But I'm restoring what you buried to survive. I'm calling out the parts of you that were silenced by shame and bringing them to the surface with boldness. Your identity was never rooted in performance, it was always rooted in presence. You were made to walk with me, to reflect me, to carry what cannot be imitated by imitation. This is why you felt out of place. This is why even success didn't satisfy. Because deep down, your soul knew you were operating under a false assignment. But no more. I'm giving you back your reflection, the one that matches heaven's vision. The version of you that is whole, free, bold, and filled with purpose. The version of you that doesn't beg to be seen because they know they've already been chosen. The version of you that doesn't chase validation because they already walk in approval. I'm not trying to improve who the world told you to be, I'm resurrecting who I formed you to be before the lies ever took root. You don't have to strive for this, it's already yours. You only need to release what was never true and receive what has always been sealed in my heart. And as you do, you will notice a shift not just in how you see yourself, but in what you attract, in how you speak, in how you move through the world. You'll no longer bend to fit environments that can't hold your light. You'll no longer question your worth based on reactions. You'll walk in a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken by human opinion. Because you've returned to truth. And this truth doesn't just liberate, it ignites. The next thing I speak will not only affirm who you are, but show you what happens when you finally begin to live from it. You felt invisible in rooms where you gave your all. You've walked through seasons where the silence was louder than any encouragement. And in those moments, the question quietly grew inside you. Does anyone even see me? But I speak to you now with the voice that silences doubt and exposes lies. You have never been forgotten. Not once. Not even for a second. While others overlooked you, I watched every detail of your life unfold with care. While they bypassed you, I was building something eternal within you. You are not lost in the crowd. You are not one among many. You are marked intentionally, unmistakably by the plans of heaven. You are not on the outside hoping for a breakthrough. You're in the center of a divine process that has been moving, even when your eyes couldn't track it. There's a reason the warfare has been so intense. There's a reason you felt pressure that didn't match your surroundings. You've been targeted, yes, but not by misfortune. You've been targeted by heaven itself for an assignment so specific, so weighty, that even the enemy could sense the preparation long before you understood it. That's why you faced battles others didn't. That's why your path has felt narrow, lonely, and often misunderstood. I've placed within you something that can't be duplicated, something tailor-made for this moment in history. You weren't randomly born. You were launched with intentionality into a timeline that needed your voice, your heart, your obedience. You carry something sacred, something that can shift rooms, change narratives, unlock chains, and birth movements. The pressure hasn't been a punishment, it's been an announcer. All of heaven has been watching the unfolding of your life, not as a spectator sport, but as a countdown to the release of what I have placed within you. You're not waiting for significance, you're carrying it. And every delay, every heartbreak, every closed door has been a setup for this moment where I now pull you from the shadows and begin to accelerate your steps into what I designed from the beginning. There is nothing average about your assignment. That's why average processes could not shape you. I had to take you the long way, not to frustrate you, but to fortify you. I needed you to survive without applause. I needed you to obey when it didn't make sense. I needed you to keep going when others quit, because where I'm sending you, character will matter more than charisma, and obedience will carry more weight than image. You're not just chosen, you've been refined for impact. I've selected you not based on performance, but based on surrender. The reason you kept standing, even with trembling knees, is because I kept holding you. I've been surrounding you with invisible strength, supernatural clarity, and divine wisdom that will now begin to manifest outwardly. This is the moment when what I've placed inside you starts to rise up with power. People will begin to notice, not because you're loud, but because my glory cannot be hidden. You're going to speak and atmospheres will shift. You'll pray and strongholds will crack. You will walk into places that once intimidated you, and you will carry authority you didn't even realize had been developing while you waited. You're not the same person who entered that storm. You're emerging with fire in your bones and oil on your life. And it's not because you fought harder, it's because you trusted me deeper. That trust is the soil in which I am now planting bold assignments. You don't have to force it. You don't have to promote yourself. You just have to walk with me, step by step, and I'll open the right platforms, introduce the right alignments, and release the right resources. You were never forgotten. You were being prepared for visibility that doesn't glorify you, it reveals me through you. And what I speak next will awaken a realm of purpose that's been waiting for your yes. There comes a moment when what has been hidden must surface, not for recognition, but because the timing of heaven demands release. That moment is now. What I've deposited in you cannot remain dormant. You've been carrying divine potential that was never meant to stay locked in theory, and I am calling it forward not in fragments, but in fullness. This purpose inside you is not optional. It's not casual. It's not something you get to postpone until you feel completely ready. It's been maturing inside you through every trial, every battle, every act of obedience you didn't even understand at the time. What you carry was planted in secret but is meant to influence openly. I've waited for this moment because now the weight of what you hold can finally rest on shoulders that know how to walk in humility. You've been faithful in obscurity, and now the mandate I placed within you is pressing against time. The assignment is not only about you, it's connected to lives that are waiting for your voice, your story, your surrender. Their next step is tied to your obedience. You can't delay it anymore. Not because of fear, not because of uncertainty, not because you feel underqualified. I'm not asking for your perfection, I'm activating your availability. What you've called delay has been development, but now the season has shifted. You are moving from preparation to manifestation. The words you carry are no longer to be stored, they are to be spoken. The vision I gave you is no longer to be hidden, it's to be built. You cannot shrink to fit yesterday's comfort when today's calling is expanding around you. I've been pushing you not to punish you, but to wake up the courage buried beneath old disappointments. The weight you feel now is not resistance, it's release. Your purpose has reached the point where it refuses to stay contained. That fire inside you, it's not frustration, it's ignition. The very things that once intimidated you will now feel like familiar ground, because I have shifted your identity into alignment with my intention. You are not stepping into something foreign, you're stepping into what I always saw in you. And though others may not yet understand, they soon will, because when you move in purpose, fruit will speak louder than explanation. This purpose is not vague, it is precise. It carries timing, people, territory, and impact that have been waiting for you to rise. No more excuses. No more delays. The detours have expired. The confusion has lifted. I've surrounded you with clarity, and I'm about to confirm it over and over again through signs you cannot miss. Dreams that once felt distant will now demand action. Doors that were once sealed are about to respond to your knock because you're finally moving with my authority. This is a divine appointment, not just for what you will do, but for who you are becoming in the process. I've entrusted you with something that cannot remain theory, it must become reality. This is why the warfare increased. This is why you felt pressure in your spirit. The time has come to act, to speak, to step out, not with hesitation, but with holy boldness. You don't need to figure out every detail. I will walk with you, instruct you, uphold you. But you must move. Because what you carry was never just for you, it's been destined to unlock others. There's a chain reaction waiting on the other side of your obedience. When you speak, chains will break. When you build, lives will shift. When you show up, atmospheres will align. And it's not because of who you were on your own, but because of what I placed inside you. That purpose is a torch I'm now setting ablaze. Let it burn. Let it lead. Let it shine. Because what I speak next will not only launch you, it will multiply what's been lying dormant for far too long. You've spent enough time questioning what's real and what's not, second-guessing yourself, doubting my voice, and wondering if you somehow misunderstood the path I called you to walk. I've seen the inner tension, the way your heart has been torn between conflicting thoughts, pulled by voices that offered advice but lacked divine insight. You've tried to be still, but the noise around you crept into your soul and made even your prayers feel tangled. That season ends now. The fog is lifting. The indecision that made your steps hesitant is being broken by the force of clarity I'm pouring into you right now. No more pacing the same ground hoping for a sign. No more emotional back and forth that wears out your strength. I am stepping in with direction so precise, it will pierce through every lie and dismantle every lingering doubt. I'm giving you discernment that cuts through what looks good on the surface and reveals what is truly sent by me. You won't have to overanalyze or be paralyzed by options anymore. You'll simply know. You'll feel it in your spirit, undeniable, unshakable, uncompromised clarity. I've seen how uncertainty has drained your energy. I've watched you hesitate when I was nudging you forward, not because of rebellion, but because you sincerely didn't want to get it wrong. I honor your desire to walk in my will. I recognize the weight you carry when decisions feel critical. But you are not alone in the choosing. I've already gone ahead of you. I've prepared outcomes that align with my design for you, and I'm about to make them visible. What once felt like a maze is becoming a mapped-out road. What once seemed like blurry impressions will now come with unmistakable confirmation. I will speak to you through unexpected moments. I will hide details others ignore. I will surround you with wisdom that brings peace and eliminates striving. This is a shift in your atmosphere, a holy stillness that makes my voice rise above the noise. You've been asking, Lord, show me what to do, and I am answering, not just with information, but with direction wrapped in peace. I don't bring confusion. I bring understanding that anchors. And today, that anchor is being dropped in your spirit. You will no longer chase advice from people who don't carry my heart. You'll stop depending on outside validation to move forward. My word will be your compass. My spirit will be your guide. and you'll walk with the kind of confidence that doesn't require permission from others. Even the people around you who once created doubt in your mind will begin to see that something has shifted. The way you respond will change. The way you interpret moments will evolve. You won't waste time revisiting what I've already spoken. You'll stop reopening doors I've closed. You'll silence the voices that speak from fear and lean into what flows from faith. I'm not just giving you answers, I'm aligning your thoughts with my thoughts so that you won't even crave what isn't meant for you anymore. Clarity is not only arriving, it's taking root, and it will grow into decisions, boundaries, connections, and movements that carry lasting fruit. You'll know who to trust. You'll know where to plant. You'll know when to move and when to rest. You won't be led by impulse, you will be led by wisdom soaked in presence. I'm exchanging the whirlwind for a whisper. I'm replacing the guessing game with firm understanding. And from this point on, confusion has no place in your process. It's been evicted. I have declared peace over your mind and light over your path. Walk in that now. And what I speak next will not only reinforce this clarity, it will reveal what's been waiting behind your obedience all along. There have been layers over your sight that you didn't place there. Impressions, expectations, false teachings, and broken words tied tightly around your spiritual vision until you began to view yourself, your journey, and even me through lenses that were never meant for you to wear. You were told who you should be before you had the space to discover who I made you to be. You were boxed in by the limitations of others who projected their fears, failures, and control onto you. It happened slowly, sentence by sentence, look by look, rule by rule, until you carried their voices louder than mine. You adapted for approval. You performed to be accepted. You shaped yourself around the desires of those who claimed to know what was best for you. And in doing so, the edges of your original design were blurred. But I never stopped seeing you. I never stopped calling you by your true name. And now I say to you with authority, the veil is being torn, not just between heaven and earth, but between you and the clarity of who I created you to be. I am removing every blindfold, every subtle deception, every spiritual distortion, every well-meaning yet misguided influence that has kept you from walking in full truth. I'm stripping away the interpretations that came from wounded people who never healed. I'm undoing the opinions that have wrapped around your decisions like chains, forcing you to seek permission from people I never assigned to your journey. Even the compliments that kept you locked into a version of yourself you've outgrown, I'm releasing you from those too. You're not bound to live in anyone's idea of you but mine. I don't need you to be who they applauded if it means you stay imprisoned. You've been navigating life with a dim perspective, and I've watched how it has stolen your courage, limited your creativity, and muffled your voice. But now, I'm awakening your spiritual eyesight. What felt foggy will now become obvious. What you were convinced was your fault, you'll see was the result of external interference. You'll realize that some of the shame you carried wasn't even yours to bear, it was handed to you through spiritual manipulation disguised as correction. That ends today. I am cutting the cords. The weight of false identity, generational pressure, and religious fear is lifting. You are being reintroduced to freedom, not the kind that makes you wild, but the kind that makes you whole. My truth is gentle, but it is also exact. And I will now begin to recalibrate the way you see yourself, your calling, your relationships, your surroundings. You'll look at things and wonder how you ever believed the narrative you were living under. You'll feel a boldness rising, not because you've suddenly changed, but because you're finally unbound. And the people who once influenced how you viewed yourself may not understand this shift. They may resist your clarity because they were more comfortable with your confusion. But that won't stop me from revealing everything. I am redeeming your vision, because what I am about to show you cannot be filtered through fear. You will begin to walk in authority you didn't even know you had access to. You will see through agendas. You will discern hidden motives. You will know when to speak and when to be silent, not from guessing, but from guidance. This freedom will feel unfamiliar at first, but you were made for it. Your spirit has longed for this for years. I'm not just restoring your sight, I'm restoring your trust in it. You won't second-guess every step. You won't be at war within yourself about every choice. You'll be led by peace, not pressure. And this inner clarity will begin to shape out a reality. Doors will open differently. Conversations will change. Connections will shift. Because once you see clearly, you stop settling for what only feels familiar. So look again, child. You are no longer seeing through what others placed on you. You are seeing through what I've placed within you. And the next thing I reveal will make it undeniable you were never meant to stay blindfolded when you were born to see. You've replayed those moments in your mind, doors that closed without warning, relationships that turned cold, invitations that never arrived. You were left wondering what you lacked, what you did wrong, why you weren't chosen when you gave your all. Rejection pierced you deeper than anyone knew, not because you were fragile, but because you love honestly. You invested yourself into people, into dreams, into places with sincerity. So when you were met with silence, detachment, or dismissal, it cut in ways no one saw. But I saw. And today, I need you to understand something holy. That rejection you mourned was not a setback, it was my protection dressed in unfamiliar garments. I let them walk away. I blocked the opportunity. I allowed the silence. Not to wound you, but to preserve what I've hidden inside of you. You saw it as loss, but I was shielding you from alignment that would have cost you your voice. The doors you tried to keep open would have delayed your assignment. The people you thought you needed would have drained your spiritual strength. And the spaces you tried so hard to fit into were never designed to hold the magnitude of what I placed within you. I didn't let it work out because I was rerouting you to something bigger, something untouched by manipulation, untainted by compromise. That no you received was not a denial of your value. It was me saying, this is not where you will bloom. I redirected you through discomfort so you wouldn't spend years watering soil that could never produce fruit. Had I allowed your plans to unfold the way you imagined, they would have eventually collapsed under the weight of what I was going to give you later. And though you couldn't see it then, I was stepping in, removing counterfeits before they could take root too deeply. Some connections weren't ready and they were prevented. Some delays weren't failure, they were exits from paths that led nowhere. You wept when it ended, but heaven rejoiced because it meant you were one step closer to divine timing. I know it hurt. I know you felt humiliated when they looked past you, when your presence was unacknowledged, when your efforts went unappreciated. But I was never measuring your worth by how they responded. I was setting the stage for you to learn that value is determined by the one who formed you, not those who failed to see you. That rejection birthed resilience. That silence carved out spiritual stillness. That abandonment exposed your dependence on what could never sustain you. And now, because you didn't collapse under it, because you didn't become bitter, because you kept choosing love, you're ready to step into rooms that were made for your voice. Rooms where you won't have to shrink. Assignments where you don't have to pretend. Relationships where you won't need to prove yourself constantly. I am sending you into new places with no residue of rejection, because what I'm preparing next recognizes the glory you carry. You won't have to chase it, it will call for you. You won't have to force it, it will flow. The pain of being passed over was a divine setup so that when I elevate you, you will never mistake man's validation for my favor. You will know the difference. You will walk with quiet authority, not because you were always celebrated, but because you were deeply refined. You are not who you were when they left. You are stronger, purer, wiser, and more aligned with my voice than ever before. And now, the redirection I designed in the shadows is becoming visible in the light. The next steps I place in front of you will be marked by ease, not because the journey is simple, but because you're finally walking where you belong. You'll see clearly now that their absence was not a curse, it was a sign that I was making space for something greater. And what I speak next will reveal how that rejection was the beginning of the story I was always writing, one filled not with chasing, but with fulfillment. You've looked back at your journey and wondered why certain things never materialized, plans that felt sure, relationships that appeared promising, breakthroughs you believed were around the corner. When the answers didn't come and the doors stayed closed, disappointment crept in quietly, followed by confusion. You asked me, why not that, Lord? Why not now? Why didn't you let it happen? I heard those questions, not as rebellion, but as the longing of someone who trusted me and still couldn't understand the outcome. And now I speak clearly to you. Every single thing I withheld from your life was not because you were unworthy or forgotten. It was because what you were reaching for wasn't big enough for what I've planned. I removed what you thought you needed so I could create space for what I've prepared, something deeper, richer, purer, and far more lasting. The things I didn't allow weren't withheld out of anger, they were intercepted out of love. I saw how your heart had added a certain vision, certain people, certain role. You thought they were the fulfillment of the promise, the answer to your waiting. But I saw what you couldn't. They were temporary solutions to eternal assignments. You were asking me to bless something that would have only satisfied a surface desire. But I am the God who looks at your foundation, not just your longing. I didn't let the temporary in because I knew it would crowd out what was supposed to be permanent. Sometimes I empty your hands so I can place in them something weightier. And yes, it feels like loss at first. It feels like something precious slipped through your fingers. But what was removed went your future with a shadow of it. I'm not interested in giving you partial fulfillment. I'm not the God of almost. I'm the God of completion. And I will not allow your destiny to be delayed by something that looks like a blessing but lacks the depth to sustain what I've placed inside you. I withheld what would have wasted your time. I blocked what would have diluted your purpose. I slowed down what would have rushed you past the lessons you needed to embrace. There were connections that would have distracted you. Opportunities that looked golden but were built on sand. Platforms that had applause but no anointing. I protected you from the shiny things that couldn't hold the weight of your calling. And while others may have walked into what seemed like quick wins, I was anchoring you deeper. I was building capacity. I was expanding your endurance. Because what I'm about to give you won't just bless you, it will bless generations through you. It needed space. It required room to breathe. And so, I cleared out what was too small. I removed what didn't align. I ended what you would have clung to out of familiarity. And now, as that space sits open in your life, I am stepping in. Not with another substitute. Not with a recycled version of what you once hoped for. But with something born directly from my heart, a fulfillment that will feel like home, because it came from the place where you were first formed. You're going to look at what I bring next and realize why I said no before. You'll see why the waiting was holy. You'll feel the shift from striving to receiving. This next thing will not require your desperation, it will respond to your surrender. It's going to come together in a way that confirms everything you quietly believed but were too afraid to hope for. You're not going to have to force it, beg for it, or question it. You'll know. You'll know it's me. Because the things I withhold, I always replace with something greater. And the next thing I release will be so right, so timely, so undeniable, that it will make sense of every moment you cried over what never came. There were moments that felt ordinary, seasons that seemed like nothing more than dry stretches of survival, days where you were simply trying to make it through without collapsing under the weight of what you couldn't explain. You didn't realize it then, but those days were sacred. They were proving grounds, hidden tests of trust, patience, humility, and integrity. You weren't being watched by the world. You weren't being cheered by the crowd. But I saw every unseen victory. I watched as you chose kindness when cruelty would have been easier. I saw you remain silent when defending yourself would have satisfied your pride. I noted how you responded to betrayal not with vengeance, but with prayer. You passed evaluations that weren't announced, and that's what made them real. There were no stage lights, no validation, no confirmation that you were doing it right, only faith. And that's exactly why it mattered. You've walked through fire without making it about you. You've endured criticism without allowing it to steal your joy. You've given when it cost you comfort. You forgave when it left you misunderstood. You showed up in places your soul wanted to run from. And because you didn't know these were tests, your response was pure. That's the beauty of it. You weren't performing for a reward, you were simply living from a surrendered heart. I was watching how you handled silence, how you waited without bitterness, how you loved without conditions. And now, the results are not in the form of a score, but in the form of trust. I can now entrust you with more clarity, more access, more responsibility. Not because you've mastered perfection, but because you've proven your foundation is firm. Tests are not always about right or wrong choices. Sometimes they are about posture. Posture when nothing changes. Posture when everything feels unfair. Posture when people misjudge your motives. And you, though weary, though confused, remain soft, willing, faithful. Even your questions carrying reverence. Even your frustrations led you back to me. And because you kept walking when your legs shook, I now say to you with delight, you passed. Not by avoiding difficulty, but by choosing me through it. Not by knowing all the answers, but by holding on to me even when everything felt unanswered. You didn't just pass by surviving, you passed by staying true to who I created you to be when the pressure tried to mold you into someone else. That's what distinguishes you. That's what has caught heaven's attention. Your tests weren't announced, but your heart revealed who you are. You didn't allow bitterness to harden you. You didn't let delay turn into disobedience. You didn't twist my silence into an excuse to give up. And now, a new level of authority is being released over your life, not one you earned, but one you've grown into. It's time for recognition, not from people, but from the Spirit. You're about to see how the hidden tests were actually gates to promotion. You're about to realize how what felt like wilderness was actually training for influence. You won't need to push open doors, they will swing wide because you have been proven trustworthy behind the scenes. I wasn't trying to trap you with hardship. I was strengthening your character under pressure. And now that your heart has been refined through the unnoticed choices, I'm placing greater weight on your words, greater impact on your obedience, greater authority in your presence, because I know you won't misuse what I place in your hands. The refining season is giving way to the releasing season. The private victories are about to bear public fruit, not because you demanded it, but because you endured. And what I reveal next will confirm what your soul has been whispering all along. Something bigger has been building, and it's finally time to step into it. You endured storms that no one knew you were in. You stood upright when everything inside you wanted to collapse. You didn't post your pain for attention, and you didn't parade your faith for applause. Instead, you carried your warfare in private, clinging to me in the dark, trusting that I saw what no one else did. And I did. I saw every tear that slid down your face in quiet moments. I heard the groans of your spirit when words failed you. I watched you lay down offenses that were never apologized for. I watched you serve with joy while carrying wounds that hadn't healed. You didn't fight with bitterness, you fought with worship. You didn't retaliate, you surrendered. You didn't run, you endured. And because you didn't demand to be seen, I now declare you will be. This is the hour when I begin to make public what I developed in you privately. The harvest that comes from hidden faithfulness is always the most powerful. I wasn't ignoring your pain. I was measuring your response. Not to punish you, but to see if I could trust you with more than survival, if I could trust you with influence, with impact, with weight that doesn't crush you. You've proven that your foundation is deeper than appearances, that your strength doesn't come from applause but from presence, my presence. And now I'm releasing what was reserved for the faithful. Your reward will not be shallow. It will be temporary. It won't just impress people, it will transform atmospheres. You didn't settle for shortcuts. You chose the long road, the quiet road, the road where the only hand you could hold was mine. This reward is not a bribe, it's a promise. It's a manifestation of what I said I would do for those who endure. You weren't pretending to be strong. You were becoming strong. And now I will clothe you with favor that speaks louder than every season you suffered in silence. This isn't compensation, it's confirmation. Confirmation that your labor was not in vain. That your midnight prayers weren't wasted. That your silent sacrifices weren't invisible. I'm bringing light to the places where you bled without recognition. You will see the fruit of faith sown in secret. You will watch the ripple effect of your endurance change not just your story, but the lives of those around you. I will do it in a way that cannot be explained by natural effort. The open reward will not match the size of your platform, it will match the weight of your obedience. People will wonder how it all shifted so suddenly. But you will know it wasn't sudden, it was seeds planted in sacred soil, now springing forth in divine timing. I do not forget the faithful. I do not overlook the ones who trust me when nothing makes sense. I do not abandon those who keep walking with broken feet and bruised hearts. And I surely do not ignore the ones who keep choosing me over convenience. You thought no one saw, but heaven was watching. Angels stood still while you pressed forward. The cloud of witnesses leaned in as you chose character over comfort, forgiveness over offense, stillness over retaliation. You didn't do it for the spotlight, but now I will cause your life to shine with evidence. Evidence that obedience opens doors no man can shut. Evidence that trusting me always leads to triumph, even when it first walks through pain. And this time, you won't have to explain it. The reward will speak for itself. So lift your head. Look around. The tide is turning, and the silence you lived in is now making a sound that says heaven is honoring the ones who chose integrity when it cost them everything. And what I do next will prove that every private yes is followed by public breakthrough. Because I never forget faithfulness, and I never let honor go unrewarded. There were moments you walked into rooms and felt invisible, misunderstood, underestimated, misread. You were sincere in your intentions, pure in your heart, but still treated as though you had nothing valuable to offer. They questioned your qualifications, misunderstood your silence, and dismissed your presence as insignificant. You weren't loud enough for them. You weren't polished in the way they expected. You didn't perform the way the world taught them to recognize worth. So they overlooked you. They labeled you based on appearances and moments, not realizing what I had been growing in you for years. They couldn't see what I placed in your spirit because they were too focused on the exterior. But I was never looking for their approval. I wasn't shaping you for their applause, I was preparing you for my unveiling. Every time they laughed at your vision or ignored your voice, they thought they were closing a chapter. What they didn't know was that I was quietly writing a story they wouldn't be able to deny. I watched how you remained respectful when they tried to silence you. I watched how you kept your hands clean and your words guarded when they misjudged you. That's why I can now bring you into a season of public unveiling, not as revenge, but as redemption. I don't vindicate with arrogance. I elevate with truth. And the truth is, I placed something in you they couldn't recognize because it wasn't birthed in human logic. It was born in heavenly places. It carries my DNA, my authority, my fire. And now, I will begin to lift the curtain on what's been developing in you. What they thought was weakness will soon be revealed as wisdom. What they called immaturity will be seen as anointing. What they treated as naivety will now be known as divine insight. I will showcase not your talent, but your obedience. Not your charisma, but your consecration. And through that, they'll begin to see what they missed. I'm not doing this to make them feel small, I'm doing this to make my presence undeniable. They will see the fruit, and they will have no choice but to trace it back to me. You won't need to defend yourself. You won't need to explain where the strength came from. I will speak through your results. Your life will be the evidence. The truth I planted in you will grow so vividly, so undeniably, that even those who once questioned your purpose will be drawn to the light it carries. Some of them will be humbled. Some will return with softened hearts. Others may stay distant, still unable to understand what they once mocked. But regardless of their reaction, your assignment is unchanged, to keep walking in love, in truth, in purpose. Let me be the one who reveals what they could not see. Let me be the one who prepares the table while they watch, not in shame but in awe. This is about more than proving them wrong. This is about proving me right. I said you were chosen. I said you were set apart. I said I placed a message inside you that would shake the atmosphere, and now, It's time they see what I saw all along. You are stepping into days where your voice will carry weight, your hands will build what others doubted, and your presence will carry the kind of authority that cannot be denied, because it's not rooted in ego, it's rooted in my spirit. And as this unfolds, stay grounded. Let humility lead you. Let love be louder than pride. Let grace be the banner over every step. Because your rise is not for show, it's for testimony. What I do through you will not only shift how they see you, it will shift how they see me. They will learn that I don't choose based on status. I choose based on surrender. And what I reveal next will silence the question of why you. Because the answer will be seen in what only I could have done through you. You assumed the pain was the result of something you did wrong. You looked at the isolation, the delay, the loss, and wondered if it was a consequence rather than protection. But I need you to hear me now with undivided attention. Nothing I allowed in your life was meant to punish you, it was all part of preserving something priceless inside you. I wasn't turning my back on you. I was standing in front of you, blocking what you didn't yet have the sight to see. I didn't remove people from your life because you failed. I removed them because they were never meant to walk with you into what's next. I didn't pause your plans to discipline you, I paused them so what's meant for you wouldn't arrive, while you were still surrounded by what couldn't support it. You thought you were being buried, but you were being hidden. You thought you were being abandoned, but you were being covered. You thought doors were closing to punish your hope, but they were shutting to shield your destiny. What looked like the end was actually the first layer of divine preservation. There were traps you didn't know existed. There were conversations held behind closed doors you never heard. There were plans formed against you that didn't succeed because I stepped in quietly, without announcement. I let things fall apart because I was holding together the pieces of your promise, waiting for the right moment to bring them into alignment. I let you feel the silence not because I was absent, but because I wanted you to grow strong enough to stand still even when you couldn't see results. Preservation often looks like loss until time reveals what it saved you from. I didn't let you get the position because it would have stolen your peace. I didn't let the relationship survive because it would have taken your identity. I didn't let the opportunity flourish because it would have elevated ego rather than spirit. My covering over your life is not always loud. It doesn't always feel like blessing at first. But what I've been doing behind the scenes will soon make it impossible to doubt my intentions. I allowed the delay because you weren't meant to arrive on your own timing. You were meant to arrive in perfect alignment with the divine blueprint I've written. And that blueprint required removing what was good so that what is ordained can take root. It required waiting for maturity to meet preparation. You have not missed it. You are not late. You are exactly where I needed you to be, aware now of who I am beyond what I give. Rooted now in truth, not emotion. Grounded in trust, not circumstance. You are no longer attached to illusions, and that clarity makes you ready. I preserved you not only from external harm, but from internal corruption. I slowed you down before ambition outran character. I allowed the quiet so pride wouldn't build in the noise. I permitted discomfort to cultivate depth. Because I'm not interested in making you impressive, I'm interested in making you immovable. What I'm forming in you will not fade when seasons shift. It will remain. And that permanence came from my protective process. What looked like wandering was actually my hand at work, keeping you from what seemed right but wasn't righteous. You were not forgotten. You were fiercely guarded. You were not being disciplined for some hidden fault, you were being refined so nothing fragile would travel with you into the future I've prepared. And now, as I begin to unfold what's ahead, you'll start to recognize how every detour was a safeguard. You'll thank me for what didn't work out. You'll praise me for what I never allowed to begin. You'll rejoice not just in the blessings but in the things that were withheld. Because now you'll see it for what it was, not punishment but preservation of promise. And what I bring next will not only confirm my protection, it will reveal how I've been saving the best until you were truly ready to carry it well. There have been things held up, not denied, not canceled, just restrained by my own hand until the moment was right. You prayed. You waited. You prayed. You fasted. You searched for answers, thinking maybe something needed to be fixed in you. But the block in you wasn't punishment, it was timing. I kept certain things suspended, not because you were unworthy of them, but because the foundation wasn't ready to hold the weight of what I've planned. Some blessings must be delayed until you're strong enough to sustain them. But now I speak with urgency in my voice. The hold is breaking. The barriers are lifting. The season of divine restraint is coming to an end, and what I've stored up is being released into motion. You've come through the proving season. You've walked through the long, dry stretches where no progress could be seen, yet you kept believing. You've endured the whispers of doubt, the temptation to give up, the weariness of waiting. But in that silence, something powerful was building. You couldn't see the progress, but I was constructing something lasting, piece by piece. And now, what was dammed up is about to overflow. And when it comes, it will come slow or small. It will come fast and full, because I'm not just releasing a trickle, I'm pouring out what's been reserved for this very moment. The acceleration will feel sudden, but it's the result of slow obedience. This release is the reward for private faithfulness. Don't be surprised when the very areas that once felt like wilderness begin to flourish overnight. Don't be shocked when the opportunities that once ignored you now search for you. When the conversations that once excluded you begin to open with your name in the center. This is not luck. This is harvest. This is what happens when I say, now. When I remove my hand, nothing can hold it back. Not resistance. Not systems. Not people. Not history. What I have decided to release cannot be reversed. What's coming will not need to be forced. You won't have to manipulate it, chase it, or beg for it. It will arrive with ease, not because it's light, but because it's yours. Doors will swing open that were once sealed. Delays will turn into divine alignments. You'll move from waiting to building, from wonder to walking, from open to holding. And the shift will feel undeniable not only to you, but to those around you. They'll see the momentum. They'll witness the fruit. And they'll know, this is my hand. You've longed for clarity, provision, breakthrough, connection. And now, wave after wave will begin to break upon your life. You'll sense it in your spirit before it shows up in your schedule. You'll feel it in the atmosphere around you. Things are moving. Barriers are trembling. The unseen is about to manifest. I've already released the word. The angels are already dispatched. The alignments are already unfolding behind the scenes. This is no longer a future thing, it's now. But hear me. As fast as it flows, stay grounded. Don't mistake the speed for permission to lose focus. Stay humble in the blessing. Stay surrendered in the breakthrough. Keep your eyes on me, not on the movement. I'm not just bringing fulfillment, I'm guarding your heart as it comes. I'm surrounding your blessing with wisdom so you'll steward it well. What's being released isn't just for your enjoyment, it's for my glory. It will feed more than your household. It will overflow into others. It will awaken things in people you didn't even know were watching you. So prepare. Make room. Clear the clutter in your mind and spirit, because the space that once held waiting will soon hold manifestation. You won't even need to announce it, your life will speak of what I've done. And the next thing I bring into your hands will feel like the missing piece. Not because you were incomplete before, but because now the picture of my promise is becoming whole. There were instructions I gave you that didn't come with explanations. I asked you to walk away from things you felt connected to, and you obeyed with trembling hands. I led you into decisions that looked unwise in the world's eyes, yet you followed because you trusted my whisper more than their volume. I moved you away from the familiar and planted you in places where nothing made logical sense, and still, you stayed. That obedience, birthed not from understanding but from faith, has caused ripple effects far beyond what you can see with your natural eyes. Every time you said yes in confusion, every time you acted when clarity hadn't arrived, you stirred the spiritual realm. And now, things that were once immovable have begun to shift permanently, not temporarily, not conditionally, but eternally. You didn't need full visibility because your spirit recognized my voice. I watched how you laid your comfort down in the quiet places. I saw how you followed with no promise of applause, no reward in sight, only a deep knowing that I was the one calling. That kind of obedience is never wasted. It builds highways in the spirit realm. It clears paths for generational breakthrough. It initiates movement that cannot be undone. The moment you stepped out in faith, entire systems began to realign. Battles started tipping in your favor before you even recognized they existed. Doors began to unlock, not just for you, but for others attached to your assignment. That's how powerful your yes is. Because you moved without needing the map, heaven responded with momentum. You didn't demand details, you just trusted my direction. That kind of surrender activates what logic never could. Angels responded to the obedience that didn't need a reason. You didn't know you were creating spiritual momentum, but that's exactly what was happening. You weren't just surviving a test, you were rewriting legacies. You weren't just choosing righteousness in the moment, you were planting unshakable roots that will outlive seasons. And now, the waves of what you triggered in obedience are coming back as undeniable movement in your favor. This isn't just a shift, it's a transformation. And no one can stop what your obedience started. The enemy thought confusion would paralyze you, but it purified you instead. He thought silence would make you retreat, but it made your discernment sharper. He hoped delay would wear you out, but it made your faith aggressive. You are no longer guessing, your soul has become anchored. And because you obeyed without insisting on answers, I now release results without delay. These are not blessings you begged for, these are blessings you built through unseen obedience. These are not outcomes manipulated by performance, these are outcomes generated by posture. You chose to remain steady when things looked contradictory. You chose faithfulness over convenience. You chose discipline over comfort. And that obedience is now bearing weight. Even in your relationships, assignments, finances, and environments, you'll begin to notice divine movement that can't be traced to human effort. It's not karma. It's not coincidence. It's covenant. I made promises over your life, and your obedience has now unlocked the phase of fulfillment. Not partial, not fragile, but full. You've graduated from needing signs to simply responding to presence. And because of that, I'm releasing evidences that no one can deny. So when the fruit begins to emerge rapidly, when the alignments appear unexpectedly, when the resources come unstoppably, remember, it's not sudden. It's been building beneath the surface, carried by every obedient step you took without reward. Your yes has activated a season that cannot be undone. What is set in motion now will outpace what tried to stand in your way. It will multiply. It will gain speed. And it will carry a signature that makes it clear, this is my movement, triggered by your obedience. What you're walking into is not a restart. It's not a recycled chapter or a do-over from failure. What's ahead is the exact place I have been guarding until your spirit was mature enough to receive it. You thought you were beginning again, but in reality, you are stepping into something that never left your future. It was simply placed under lock and key until you were ready to carry it with honor. I've not erased the years behind you. I've used them. Every detour, delay, collapse, and pause has shaped your hands for what I'm now placing in them. You didn't lose time, you were being aligned with it. This is not a fresh attempt. This is the moment I bring you into the exact space that your tears, prayers, and faith have been watering all along. When things fell apart, it felt like everything meaningful had slipped from your grasp. You questioned whether you were back at the beginning, stripped of progress, stripped of stability, unsure of your direction. But that was a lie whispered by disappointment, not a declaration from heaven. I was never discarding your journey. I was refining it. I was never resetting your life as punishment. I was rerouting it to protect your purpose. I preserved what is yours completely untouched by what tried to sabotage you. What was meant for you is not gone to another. It's been safeguarded, tucked away in divine timing, waiting for your readiness to collide with my release. You'll begin to see that what I've kept in reserve for you is better than what you would have accepted before. You were willing to settle when you didn't understand the value of what I had promised. That's why I had to pull you away, not to leave you empty, but to preserve fullness for a future moment. And now that moment has come. This is not you going back to step one. This is me pulling the covering off what's been hidden until you were no longer desperate, but discerning. No longer impulsive, but surrendered. Now you are not walking in with questions, you are entering with authority. And that shift makes all the difference. What's opening for you now won't feel like effort. You will feel like inheritance. Not because it will be easy, but because it will be yours. You'll recognize the fit. You'll sense the alignment. You'll feel peace where anxiety used to live. That's how you will know you're not guessing, you're finally walking in what was always written for you. You'll see that what felt like starting over is actually stepping into fulfillment. The relationships, the provision, the clarity, the opportunities, they will come not as random gifts, but as the confirmation that you're no longer chasing potential, you're stepping into destiny. I preserved these things not just so you could enjoy them, but so you could steward them well. If I had released them before, you might have carried them like trophies. But now, you'll carry them like assignments. You'll understand that everything I entrust to you in this season is tied to something greater than comfort, it's connected to impact. The doors I'm opening aren't just for you to walk through, there, for others to find refuge in as well. That's why it had to take time. Because now, what I place in your hands won't slip through your fingers. You've been tested. You've been refined. And now, you're trusted. So walk into this next season with assurance, not as someone starting from zero, but as someone being restored with interest. This isn't compensation. It's completion. The time wasn't wasted. The tears weren't for nothing. The pruning wanted to break you, it was to position you. You didn't lose your place in the plan, you just had to grow into the version of yourself who could handle it. And now that you have, the door you've been waiting for is opening, not as a chance to begin again, but as the moment you finally step into everything I preserved for you from the beginning. There are moments that still feel like open wounds, relationships that vanished, opportunities that dissolved, places you poured your heart into only to watch them fade. You revisit those moments, sometimes wondering what went wrong, asking why I let things slip through your fingers when your intentions were pure. But listen to me now, with your spirit wide open. I didn't remove those things to harm you. I allowed them to leave because they were never built to endure where I was taking you. I let them fall not to grieve you but to grow you. What exited your life wasn't strong enough to stay rooted in the soil of your destiny. It was temporary, no matter how tightly you held it, and I love you too much to let you carry what cannot survive the journey ahead. You saw the removal as rejection. I saw it as redirection. You mourned what left. I celebrated what was making room. I never asked you to despise the loss, I asked you to trust me with it. Because I know what doesn't just feel good now, but what will still be standing when the storms of life come. I know the kind of relationships that don't just speak to your emotions but protect your purpose. I know the kind of roles and platforms that don't just give you visibility, but strengthen your voice. That's why I didn't let you keep what you thought you needed. I was making space for what your soul truly required. There were people you prayed would stay, jobs you begged me to keep, paths you hoped would continue. But those prayers weren't denied, they were lovingly filtered. You didn't fail because they didn't last. They didn't last because they were never meant to carry eternal weight. You're not cursed for losing them, you're chosen to carry something greater. What I'm building with you requires deep foundations, and I don't pour concrete over fragile attachments. I don't anoint where compromise is tolerated. So I stripped the temporary, not to expose your weakness, but to make you unshakable. You may not have seen it immediately, but each loss was a pruning. Each detachment was preparation. You were never meant to walk this road holding the weight of expired connections. So I cut off what couldn't grow with you, not as punishment, but as protection. I took away what would have distracted you, drained you, deceived you, or destroyed what I was forming within you. And now, you'll begin to notice that what remains in your life is what can weather pressure, What stays now is what's tied to your calling, not your comfort. You'll look back and see that nothing essential was taken, only what was seasonal. I allowed the loss, not to leave you empty, but to empty your hands so I could place in them what is enduring. What I'm giving you now carries weight. It won't shift with the trends. It won't flee when tested. It won't evaporate when emotions cool. It's rooted in truth, watered by grace, and sealed by covenant. The relationships that arise now will have depth. The assignments that land now will have clarity. The doors I open now won't swing shut in the next season. They'll become gateways into lifelong purpose. And when it comes, it won't compete with what you lost. It will heal the places you didn't know were still aching. It will silence the inner critic that told you something was wrong with you when things fell apart. It will redeem the timeline you thought was ruined. What I'm doing is not a replacement, it's a resurrection. What's ahead doesn't erase the pain, it gives it meaning. And you will carry it all, not as a burden, but as evidence that what was taken away wasn't the end, it was the beginning of what would remain. So don't grieve the loss forever. Let it become the soil where trust grows. Let it become the proof that I know what I'm doing when I take, not just when I give. And know this: with every breath you take from now on, what's in front of you is not built on chance. It's built on my eternal plan. And this time, it's going to last. You learned how to blend in for survival. You adjusted your voice, masked your emotions, dimmed your light just to fit into rooms that couldn't handle your brilliance. You took on roles to gain acceptance and wore layers to hide your vulnerability. I watched as you shaped yourself to meet expectations that never belonged to you, how you became skilled in performing strength while silencing your true essence. But I couldn't let you stay hidden behind the mask you crafted to protect yourself. That's why I allowed the discomfort to strip away the false coverings. I didn't expose you to embarrass you, I did it to bring you back to your original blueprint. There's a version of you that I created before the world ever named you. A version free from performance. A version bold in truth, radiant in love, anchored in me. And in order for that version to emerge, I had to unravel the costume. You thought you were losing confidence, but really you were losing counterfeit identities. You thought you were falling apart, but I was pulling off the weight of every false label. You didn't know it, but even your success had become a disguise. Your strength was masking your need for me. Your achievements were covering your ache to be seen for who you really are. So I interrupted the illusion. I let certain things collapse, not because they weren't good, but because they were built around a version of you that wasn't authentic. I removed relationships that only loved your act, not your heart. I closed platforms that celebrated your image, but ignored your soul. And as painful as it was necessary. Because I can't bless a mask. I can't anoint a projection. I can only release the fullness of destiny on the design I authored, not the one shaped by fear, trauma, or pressure. That's why I went after the parts of you that were edited for approval. I came for the places you hid, not to shame you, but to restore you. The shedding felt like humiliation, but it was actually healing. I didn't let you stay where you were tolerated, I led you into places where you'd have to be transparent. Because what I'm about to entrust you with can't be carried by someone pretending. It requires realness. It requires wholeness. It requires someone who isn't afraid to walk into rooms fully themselves, even when that version doesn't fit the mold. That's what I've been preparing you for. You didn't know it, but every uncomfortable moment has been peeling back the layers that were never meant to be part of your identity. And now, you'll begin to feel the freedom of walking in your true form. Not the version people applauded, but the version I designed. You'll realize that the doors meant for you don't require you to shrink. The assignments I place in your hands will fit your original shape. You'll feel peace where there used to be pressure, flow where there once was force. You'll begin to be drawn toward people and spaces that honor the design, not the disguise. This is not about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you were before fear taught you to hide. You'll find strength in your softness, power in your transparency, joy in your vulnerability. You'll no longer need to prove anything. The weight of performance will fall off, Because my grace isn't attracted to perfection, it moves where there's authenticity. And when others try to lure you back into roles you outgrew, you'll simply smile because now you know. You don't need to fit in when you were born to stand apart. You don't need to wear the costume when your Creator has called you to walk in purpose. So walk forward now, not in pretense, but in purity. Let the world see what I shaped in secret. Let your voice echo with the sound of truth, not imitation. I removed the disguise so the world could finally meet the person I handcrafted for this moment. And now, your design will speak louder than your defense ever did. The light they'll see in you won't come from effort, it will come from alignment. And the favor that follows will not be for who you tried to be, but for who you finally become. You spent nights wondering why they couldn't see your heart clearly, why your intentions were misread, why your silence was mistaken for pride, and your loyalty was labeled as weakness. You tried to explain yourself, only to find that the more you spoke, the more misjudged you became. The rejection confused you. The isolation stung. You thought something was wrong with you. But beloved, hear me now. There was nothing wrong with your spirit. I was the one cloaking you. I was the one allowing confusion to protect consecration. If I had let them understand you, they would have clung to you for what you carried, but not honored what I was growing. So I made your language foreign to those who weren't assigned to your destiny. It wasn't about popularity, it was about purity. I wasn't punishing you by keeping you hidden. I was preparing you by keeping you separated. If they had applauded you too soon, you would have mistaken attention for alignment. You would have diluted your message to stay accepted. But I never called you to be palatable. I called you to be prophetic. I didn't design you to blend, and I marked you to carry what couldn't be mixed. And for that, you had to be misunderstood. For that, I had to create a gap between your heart and their perception. Because if they had fully understood you, they would have tried to tame you. But I need your spirit wild with obedience, not domesticated by human expectation. I didn't just hide your intentions, I concealed your weight. I made your presence feel small to those who couldn't steward your presence well. I did it to protect what I was planting. You carried something rare, and rare things are often mistaken for odd. They called you confusing, difficult, intense, but I called you chosen. You weren't difficult, you were different. And I wasn't going to let anyone define you before you discovered your true identity in me. That's why you didn't fit in the crowds you once craved. That's why you felt disconnected in rooms full of people. That wasn't rejection, it was redirection. You see, I had to wean you off the need to be seen, so that when I do reveal you, you won't bow to the opinions of those watching. I didn't want you to be addicted to validation. I wanted you rooted in conviction. And now, you're strong enough to carry what once would have crushed you. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need a spotlight to prove your value. You've learned how to walk in silence, covered in grace, full of purpose. And now, when I start connecting you with those who truly see you, you'll know the difference. You'll know what alignment feels like. You will recognize hearts that don't just admire your fire but protect it. Those who couldn't recognize you weren't bad, they were just never meant to journey with you. You weren't designed to be explained to everyone. You were fashioned for impact, not for applause. That's why I kept you hidden in plain sight. That's why even when you were present, you felt invisible. But I haven't forgotten you. I've just been refining you in solitude so I could release you in strength. And when you emerge now, it won't be with bitterness, it will be with boldness. Not with resentment, but with revelation. Because now, you know, you were never meant to be understood by the wrong ones, you were set apart for the right ones. So release the frustration. Let go of the need to convince people of who you are. Stop trying to decode the silence. What felt like exile was really me creating space for encounter. What felt like abandonment was actually an anointing in progress. I shielded you long enough. Now, I'm calling you forward not to prove anything, but to walk confidently in the truth that who I made you to be doesn't need translation. It just needs to be released. And now, the time has come. Amen.